Facebook Live event. Welcome to Better Utah broadcast. My name is Katie Matheson. I'm the Communications Director with Alliance for a Better Utah, or and we are clearly up here at the Capitol. We had a little bit of a audio issue again, so we are going to be speaking loud and projecting today. Leave us some comments, say hi, whatever. With me today, I have two guests, one of whom is still getting his lunch because it's lunch hour here at the Capitol. I also have Katie Lieberman, here from Action Utah. So Katie, can you give us a little background about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So professionally, I'm a psychotherapist, but about a year ago, following the election in November of 2016, a friend, colleague of mine decided that we really wanted to get involved in policy and politics in the state, so we co-founded an organization called Action Utah that's really designed to elevate the voices of Utahns and help Utahns be better equipped to be part of the representative democracy in their political system.
Cool. And why did you feel like that was important? I mean, obviously, civic engagement is always important, but what in particular about this election or about your history with elections in Utah, what was it that made you want to do this?
Well, when I started paying attention to policy and politics in a more meaningful way after the election, what I noticed that it was striking was that the majority of Utahns that I talked to, regardless of their political ideology, tended to agree on a set of issues, values, that really they wanted to see put in place. And then you looked at the political system and noticed that, in fact, there's still an ideological divide in terms of policymakers promoting this set of policies and positions that were misaligned with the majority of those who we're talking to. So we did our research and found out that, in fact, that is true. There is a misalignment between representatives and constituents. And so we aim to create a platform for those constituents to better access their policymakers in order to be able to find that alignment.
That's really interesting. Why do you think that is? Like, what is it about our system? Is this a systemic thing? Like, why is that happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's...
Hold on. Do we need to scoot, not touch the table?
Yeah, don't touch the table because it's making that thing shake a lot. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
Hey, Ken, not a problem.
So, sorry, go ahead.
So I think there's a number of issues that contribute to this misalignment. Number one is that, yes, the caucus convention system is such that we have delegates who are typically representational of each ideological right and ideological left, having an extraordinary amount of power to shape the
you can just go onto our page and it should be showing up.
Policy. And then also, you know,
you have to be an
apathy
administrator. I can't
here in Utah, or has been, where we have low voter turnout and a lot of people not necessarily engaged and informed. And finally, I just think there's a lack of education about how the political process works and actually how accessible it is. And so once people understand how much they can impact the system and how easy it is to get involved, it really changes the dynamic. So we noticed those three areas, and that's what really made us want to get involved.
That's really great. And you guys just work on the local level, just Utah?
You know, not necessarily. We do track and follow some national issues and jump in as needed. You know, it's obviously important to keep our national elected officials accountable. But I would say that the bulk of our work is on a local and state level because I think that's where people really can have their hands in and get involved more easily.
Oh yeah, like a congressional district, which is the smallest federal seat, is like 700,000 people or something like that.
Exactly.
Whereas like a local legislative.
Well, and our legislators post their cell phones. You know, it's like it could not be easier to get involved. You know, they'll meet you for breakfast. You know, you can't do that with your national reps.
Yeah.
And actually in many states you can't even do that with your state reps. And so because of accessibility, and that's really what we want to provide for our members. So because of accessibility, that's why we focus more on local and state issues.
That's great. And you know, I found that when I first started really getting involved and learning about the whole process, for me an issue that I had was in terms of accessibility, it was lack of accessible language that was used.
Right.
And so there's all these words and all this, it's almost like a cloud that covers the process. So it's great that you guys can kind of use the vernacular, I guess, and start teaching people what exactly this and that means.
Right, exactly. Like for example, to that point, sitting down to read a piece of legislation is daunting. So we take the piece of legislation, condense them into one sheets, into half sheets, so that they're easily digestible and easily understood. Because you're absolutely right, it's intimidating to go straight from, I want to learn about policy to I'm going to read this piece of legislation,
it's really
so
good.
You're absolutely right.
So to just cut in real quick, how are we doing? Are we good with the tech? Oh, Chase has an iPad.
I do.
Congratulations! You've been wondering about whether or not you're going to buy that for a long time. Well done, everyone. Clap for Chase. Well done. Good job. All right, so with us now, we've just been joined by Ken Pedersen.
Yes.
All right, so Ken, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am, for campaigns, I have experience in the field, team management, data management. I currently serve as the legislative chair in Sugar House District 25. I am up here to talk to our elected representatives and try to learn the language as best I can.
It's kind of fun, huh?
Yes. I'm kind of a nerd like that.
Fun is a word.
It's really fun.
Yeah, it can be fun. Yeah. And just, our mics are just not working, so speak up so that the camera can hear you. I think I have a lot of fun. It really gives me a kick, and I know this is just odd, but it gives me a kick just being in this cafeteria and, seeing the legislators come in and seeing, all the movers and shakers. I'm like, oh, look, we're all just sitting here in the cafeteria eating food and chatting. And the other day I sat down with somebody, and it turned out he was a former representative for South Jordan, and so he knew my uncle, and it was a great conversation that we had. So it's just, you never know.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear from both of you. Well, I kind of heard from Katie, but why did you get involved, Ken?
Well, so I first started paying attention during the first Obama campaign. I know President Obama made a large impact for me because it was such a paradigm shift. And then as we got on, obviously I got a little disparaged. And the type of guy, if you see something, you have to get it on. I know we all feel that way. And touching on what you were saying, it's not as intimidating as you would think. As I've gotten involved and learned, met people themselves, I've become more vested, and that's what it's really all about.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we always say, the co-founders of Action Utah on our team, we say that when we can get people up to the Capitol, it's like the gateway drug.
Yeah.
And it changes everything for folks in terms of their investments. Yeah. And so I agree with you. It's fun to be up here, and once people get up here, I think they really see that this process is, it really is user friendly.
Yeah, and I wonder if maybe even the hardest part of getting involved is just like making the decision that you're going to do it, and then just walking through the doors, or frankly parking here at the Capitol.
Yeah, that's the first obstacle. That's it. That's the one.
So, Chase, what's the free transit Capitol Connector?
500.
Woohoo!
Plus
Capitol
500.
Connector 500.
From Courthouse Station or North Temple Station.
From Courthouse Station or North Temple Station. Good to know. That's just kind of, the building is beautiful, but also intimidating. And so walking through those doors is kind of the first spot, and then feeling like it's your first day of school and not knowing, and trying to sit with somebody in the cafeteria and the whole thing. Anyway.
Actually, my rep, Joel Briscoe, has been very accessible. This week, actually, we had an event and we raffled off a session to sit on the floor with him. And man, that was fast paced, and I need more. I need more.
Yeah, that's fun. And sitting on the floor is amazing.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
we are very lucky to have such a beautiful Capitol. Okay, so now let's just dive into the nitty-gritty kind of. So today we're talking about good government, and specifically kind of focusing on voting in Utah. So a little background, the Tribune just did a piece last week or 2 weeks ago where 300,000 Utahns who had the opportunity when they were going to get a license to check the box to register to vote did not. And so there's been rebuttal about there's a certain number, twice the number, who had the opportunity to do that. But that's still 300,000 Utahns who just decided not to, or didn't know that they could check the box to vote. We know that we're 39th in the nation as of 2016 for voter turnout, and we know specifically in the 4th district, the voter turnout was the lowest of all the districts in Utah. To what you guys think, why don't Utahns vote? What's the problem? Taking total guesses,
right?
Or based on data,
right? Exactly. I'm like, you want to jump in with this first? I think that for many Utahns, and this is a very classic answer, I think, everywhere, but very much true in particular states where there's been one dominant party in power for a long time. There is a sense that my vote is not going to shift, that color scheme.
Yeah.
And so there's a sense that it doesn't matter, really. And I think that that's true. Often, you hear conservatives say this in deep blue states. You hear liberal folks say it in conservative states. And then you also have, I think, a slew of the purples that just feel like they don't really have a home anywhere, so they don't show up and vote. So I think that's one, I posit that that's one reason why we have the low rate of voter turnout here. What do you think?
Well, that's a great start, and especially after the last few cycles, it has been disparaging. There is more energy now, but I worked on the special election last year, and that even then was disappointing because the rest of the nation's special elections were very competitive, and ours, we had about 30% turnout.
And you're speaking about the CD3,
yes,
or the Jason Chupin seat?
Yes.
Okay. And what was it, 33% you said?
About just under 40.
Yeah. It was also August.
Yes.
And I do think that that's a point we have to make too, in that August is a difficult time of month to get, or a difficult month to get anybody to do anything.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I agree. That was a disappointment. We were really involved in getting voter turnout and participation in that election as well.
Yeah. Do you think that, I'm looking throwing this out there, you don't have to answer, do you think that the districts and how they're drawn is a factor in that? So what I mean is basically gerrymandering. Yeah. Do you think that gerrymandering is a factor? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the data backs that up. The court ruling is being struck down in both blue and red states.
Yeah.
North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. We have the ballot initiative this year, Better Boundaries.
Woo-hoo, wait, hold on. Better Boundaries. I assume everyone here has signed it, but if you haven't, go sign it. Because they have to turn in the signatures by April 15th.
Right.
I'm sorry, continue.
Well, and I just think it's genius because it's not only accomplishing something and fixing a problem that affects everyone, it's increasing engagement. We're harnessing this energy and putting it to good work, to good use.
Yeah.
And it's really encouraging.
Yeah, I think it's exciting, and I think there's some momentum nationwide to really address districts and having independent commissions look at them in various states. I think that's positive for the country.
Yeah, and it's interesting. This time a year ago, I spoke with my legislator at the time, my rep, my state rep, and I asked him about gerrymandering, and I asked what the state legislature was going to do to ensure that next time redistricting came around, the districts were drawn fairly, and it hadn't even occurred to him that was a problem. So of course, he was a member of the Republican Party, and so I guess it hadn't even occurred to him, and he was also new to the legislature. But now I can't imagine that there's a single legislator here who is not familiar with gerrymandering and familiar with the ballot initiative and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely gained momentum.
And I think the fact that you have had really significant national instances that are challenging gerrymandering in both parties, I think that, I hope for a lot of people, takes any partisan rhetoric out of this discussion, because it really shouldn't be an issue that is drawn on ideological lines. I mean, this is to have representational democracy.
Let's start with the voting bills that are at the legislature right now. So do you guys have any in particular that you're interested in talking about?
Well, Action Utah has been really closely involved in a number of voting and government-related bills, and we're really excited about Steve Handy's bill that's actually coming up. Gosh, is it tomorrow?
Is it tomorrow?
Could be tomorrow.
Trace, do you know?
I don't know.
Oh, we don't know.
Okay. It's always, things move so quickly.
Yeah,
Here it's
24
hard to
hours
keep
notice,
track.
yeah.
But as far as the opt-in, an automatic opt-in on driver's licenses to have people be able to, just automatically have their access to voting in terms of the registration already done. We have county clerks in every single county asking for this.
You mean opt out, right?
What's that?
So the bill is to allow people to opt out. So
I'm sorry, opt in.
Yeah.
You're automatically in.
You're automatically
unless
registered.
you consciously choose to opt out.
Right.
Yes, thank you, Katie, for the clarification.
You're welcome, Katie.
Yes. Thank you, Katie. Great name. But I do. I think it's a really important bill, not only just because it's an efficient use of government time and resources to make sure that our clerks are focusing on what they need to be, focusing on enough unnecessary paperwork, but also it just allows people to automatically have access to this right that they can choose to exercise if they want. They still have to go to a voting booth or participate by mail. It's not as though that's being handed to them. They still take some active initiative, but they have that step taken care of for them where they don't have to do cumbersome additional paperwork or additional errands or go down to their state office buildings. It's a lot for working families and elderly folks and students to be able to add that into their day. So I think this just makes good sense. It's a great bill. Yeah,
and I mean, do you have any thoughts about the rebuttal? I hear a lot about that. Like the people who are against this bill say that you should have to work to vote. Like you should be made. There should be some type of work involvement.
Right.
And of course, you said,
Supreme Court has established that voting should and is a right, and it should not be restricted due to race. Historically, has been age, capability, and Utah especially is moving in that direction. Sherry Swenson and the push to increase mail-in ballots just has results, and I think it's very right.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree, and accessibility is important. The work is still incumbent upon every citizen. You have to study and know the ballot. You have to check the boxes. You either put it in the mail or show up in person. There is still an inherent amount of work that goes along with voting that people can exercise. But to me, this bill is really about accessibility.
Yeah.
And that's important. And that is a fundamental right to have the accessibility to the act of voting, and then the decision to engage in that or not is incumbent upon each person. So I think it's an important bill.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this bill in particular.
Yeah.
I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have a bill that you're looking at? Anything in particular?
I certainly do. A bill that Joel Briscoe has introduced again has come up. I believe it's coming up before committee. It's HB 0281. It's the Voting Rights Amendment. What the idea is giving 17-year-olds the right to vote in a primary if they'll be 18 on election. Now, other cities in the state, both red and blue, have started to adopt this. The idea would be, if you live in a community, you should have some say. And again, county clerks all over, Republicans, Democrats are all on board with this. So I feel very confident, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, particularly because we know the data shows that young voters tend to not turn out to vote. We're not very good about showing up to vote. And so I can imagine that were I in that scenario where I was 17 during the primary and then 18 in order to vote in the general election, I imagine that I would, if the candidate that I wanted in the primary didn't make it, I imagine it would tamper my excitement about actually showing up to vote. Because who cares? I would be like, who cares? So that's really interesting. I like that.
Yeah, and I have to give credit to Sherry Wood, South Salt Lake Mayor. My son, 13-year-old, he didn't care about all this. He knew I'm active, but Sherry Wood came in, spoke to the class, and he came home just ecstatic, just that the mayor would come in and say hi. And I think that should be encouraged, and it can be done. And honestly, young people need to realize, and I didn't realize this enough, that they can own this process. There is a place for them, and there's no reason to be discouraged or hopeless or cynical.
I mean, we just got to show up. That's like the very first thing in terms of.
I think that's beginning to happen. You know, I think there's a lot of momentum right now towards getting younger people engaged. I think this bill goes a long way in doing that. I think there's also a couple of bills, if I can jump in a little bit, because one that's going to go this afternoon for discussion is actually John Westwood's bill to decrease the period of early voting, the window of time from 14 days on site at your county or at your state or county office down to 2 days. And you know, we talked just briefly before about accessibility and how important that is, that accessibility is offered to every citizen of this country, and I think that this bill is potentially really harmful. You know, a lot of people really need to utilize that walk-in process to be able to vote, either because their address is shifted, they may not have postal service that's easy and accessible to where they're living now, and they depend on being able to go on site to be able to cast their ballot. And restricting that to a mere 48 hours is a problem.
Yeah, I mean, that very thing happened to me. I moved. Right. I didn't get my ballot in this last election in November. So I had to go to my local polling place.
Exactly.
And so for me, I get a little bit frustrated because I hear a lot of the arguments against early voting as being arguments that are kind of lack understanding about the variance in the voting public. You know, in the lives that we lead. I mean, my husband and I, we both work full-time jobs. We have 2 little kids. Sometimes voting day is just incredibly inconvenient, and I have to work very, very hard to get to the polling place, and I'm going to do it because I'm in this work. But for a lot of people, they're like, oh, my schedule's too tight, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
We have a question on this bill.
Dun, dun, dun.
Is the idea for this bill to cut down on the cost of early voting?
I don't know, is that the intention?
Yeah, I think that, yes, that's part of it. Although we know the cost to be very minimal. These are offices that are already open during the hours, during this 2-week period of time, during the hours that people would come in. They're already staffed in basic ways to be able to accommodate people exercising their vote. So this really is a minor cost. And so, although that is an argument, I don't think it's a very robust argument, and so it doesn't really hold up.
Yeah, and for me, I'm sorry, I'm totally speaking over you. For me, this is like, if the function of government is not to allow people to have a say in their government, what is the function?
Right.
Come on, that's like the first, for me, that would be one of the primary purposes of this government, is to allow the people to have a say. And so even if there is a small fiscal note attached, to me, that's great for me,
Right, and as someone that's been on the ground for a couple of years, actually, I've had to explain to people how to fill out their mail-in ballot. It would actually cost us money, because in 2016, we actually had people that did not understand what to do with their mail-in ballots, so they swarmed the polling booth, and there was not enough funding for emergency sites. It's since been corrected. Again, it's inefficient, it ruins data, and it turns people off.
Yeah.
Another question was, are efforts to get out the vote more the job of grassroots organizations or the government?
Good question.
We're like traditional role of government conversation right here.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I mean, to an extent, right? I think it's both. I think that grassroots organizations play a key role in alerting the public to the issues that are pertinent and that matter, that could affect their lives. They play a key role But absolutely, elected officials, these are, their constituents. I believe that they have a right and responsibility to help encourage them to access, to be accessible to the people that they're electing. And I think elected officials do need to play a key role in that. So it's both.
Yeah.
I would say it's actually pretty intertwined. Because yes, it starts at the grassroots level, like we're all doing, folks at home are doing. But again, I do see a role for government because they are here to represent us.
Yeah.
And if they do their job correctly, that will fuel the grassroots and vice versa.
Yeah.
That's sorry. Our camera is we're having like a Jurassic Park scene where I know me.
No, it's actually creating drama. I think when you talk.
There you go.
Awesome. Okay, those are good questions. Continue the follow-up questions and argue amongst yourselves in the comments. Okay, and then there's one more. I think it's. Which one is that?
Well, I don't know which ones you had in particular. So I know that Rebecca Travis Hawk
That's what I was
is right. Is that what you're? Okay, yeah. So the same day voter registration, which she has really been a champion for this issue for years. I think it's an important piece of legislation, and many states we know have very successfully adopted same-day registration and seen their voter turnout increase as a result, and it just again allows accessibility for more and more constituents. So I think it's an important bill, and this is her last year here in the legislature.
Come say hi. Come say hi.
So my hope is that she.
Yeah, we're filming.
Yeah,
Come say hi.
she'll be
Look, it's ACLU. ACLU stopped it.
Wanted to say hello.
Hi. We're going to be doing a live video with ACLU next week.
Yes.
Oh, segue.
Woohoo, segue.
Preview, right?
doing a cameo.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing cameos.
And all I have to do is wear a different shirt and I'll leave.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean,
You have another one right there?
I'm making a.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
I'll see you later.
Sorry, go
I have
ahead.
my
No,
nonprofit
I just think it's a great bill. I think it would be so wonderful to see this bill
That's the
during
new one that we did just for the
during her last year
Oh, yeah.
here in the legislature. And
Thank you.
I think it's one she's just done a masterful job with continuing to promote and support.
Yeah.
And on the topic of Rebecca, she has been pretty innovative in new solutions. At the Democratic convention in 2017 to elect a new chair, she actually implemented a complementary system of ranked choice voting. So they ranked one of 7 candidates, great candidates we had, in order of preference because we had a couple drop out. And what the results show was it lined up almost perfect. The ranked total voting matched up. And I think that's a way to give people a preference.
Yeah.
They're not just black and white, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So to kind of close up, speaking about voting in general, one more question. I have a theory, actually it's not my original theory, but I'm going to claim it right now, is that these ballot initiatives, if they make it onto the ballot in November, are going to increase voter turnout, particularly stuff like Medicaid expansion and medical marijuana. Do you guys think that's true? Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. And I find it interesting that we have some federal people in federal seats in Utah who are suddenly coming out in favor of medical marijuana as these ballot initiatives are looking like it's going to start turning people out. They get onto the ballot in 2018. It's very interesting how that's working out.
Well, I'm working on a few getting candidates on the ballot, incumbents and challengers.
By collecting signatures?
Yes. There are a couple Senate candidates that have not, and a couple that have, like Mitchell Weiss, and apparently Mitt Romney will do it. I don't know why. But
If he runs.
yes.
If he's running. If he announces on the 15th that he's running.
It's announcing something.
So again, it's a great way to get involved, get to know people, increase turnout, and honestly, it's pretty fun.
And it's so rare that Utah gets ballot initiatives to actually make it into the hands of the public. There's a number of barriers here in Utah. It's true in many states, but I think that being able to overcome those barriers and allow the public to weigh in on these issues is absolutely going to increase enthusiasm and interest in the political process. So we're really hopeful and excited that some, if not all, of these are going to make it to the finish line. I think it's good for Utah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, increasing civic engagement, all these things, that's never bad.
No.
So this is it's going to be a very, very interesting year. Here's hoping that the legislature doesn't kind of undermine some of these ballot initiatives. I know there's a couple that, who knows, there's the school and Medicaid, the medical marijuana and Medicaid expansion, there's questions.
Yeah, I think there's questions in all areas. I think there's some attempt to address all 5 or 6, ballot initiatives. So we'll just have to watch and see. It's why it's so important to be vigilant.
And I mean, like, even to speak to civic engagement, I'm sorry, this is actually the last thing. To speak to civic engagement, the fact that we are seeing all of these bills now just as a reaction to the ballot initiatives, not even being on the ballot yet, but just the civic will for these things to happen, it's remarkable. So in fact, yes, this proves your point that you brought up at the very beginning, which is that
it's coming full circle.
Yeah, it's completely on accident. Yeah, it's that the engagement is working.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, that's awesome. Oh, I'm so excited now. All right, so that's it for today. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Better Utah. Where can we follow you guys?
ActionUtah.org. You can also follow us at Action Utah on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Cool. What about you?
I am at Facebook mostly. My name is Ken Pedersen. You will still misspell it because everyone does.
I do, sorry.
Totally fine. We also have a Facebook page for our legislative districts, House District 25. We are having caucus night, and the entire party will have caucus night March 20th.
Which party?
Democrat.
Democrat.
Well, actually, I think both parties do.
I think are both parties on the 20th?
Both parties.
Yeah, we'll be hosting it at Emerson Elementary. We'll have some great guest speakers, food, and we'd love to have you.
I'm there if you say food. Okay, so we've got Action Utah. All right, so you can subscribe to our emails to get updates about the legislative session. You guys have emails
Absolutely.
too? Yep.
Yep.
Woohoo!
Yep.
All the bill trackers. And then check out our website for updates as well. And then, like we said, next week, 12:30 on Wednesday, we will be joined by ACLU. We're going to be doing a co-hosting event, so it's very exciting. All right, guys, thanks. See you next time.